Before I begin, if you've ever lived through betrayal like this, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. My name is Marissa, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was surrounded by loyalty. I believed I had a strong marriage, a loving husband, and a best friend who knew my heart better than anyone else. I thought my life was ordinary, safe, predictable. I had no idea that behind every warm smile in my home, behind every friendly hug, behind every reassuring word, a quiet storm was already building, and I was the only one who didn't see the clouds. I met my husband, Daniel, 12 years ago at a community fundraiser. He was charming, gentle, the kind of man who held doors open and listened when you spoke. He laughed easily and made everyone feel seen. When he asked for my number, I remember thinking that life had finally decided to be kind to me. We dated, we fell in love, and within 2 years we were married in a small garden ceremony surrounded by friends and family. I remember the way he looked at me at the altar, warm, certain, devoted. I built my trust on that look. My best friend, Talia, was my maid of honor. We had met in college, survived breakups together, celebrated promotions together, cried on each other's couches through bad days. She was the sister I chose. When Daniel came into my life, Talia embraced him immediately. They joked easily, teased each other like siblings. I was grateful. It felt like my two favorite people in the world liked each other. I saw that as a blessing. Looking back now, I wonder how many signs I ignored simply because I wanted everything to be perfect. The early years of our marriage were steady, not dramatic, not overly romantic, but comfortable. Daniel worked long hours as a regional sales manager. He traveled often, sometimes for 2 or 3 days at a time. I worked at a local accounting firm. Our routines were simple. Dinner when he was home, text messages when he was away, weekend grocery runs, Sunday morning coffee on the porch. Nothing felt suspicious. Nothing felt wrong. Talia lived only 15 minutes away. She came over often. Sometimes she dropped by unannounced with takeout and gossip. Daniel would sit with us, laughing at our stories, offering his opinions when asked. If he was traveling, she'd keep me company so I wouldn't feel lonely. She'd say things like, "That man of yours is lucky to have you," and I'd smile, believing her. Life settled into a rhythm that felt safe until small cracks began to show. It started with missed calls. Daniel would be away on a work trip, and when I called in the evening, sometimes he wouldn't answer. He'd text later saying he'd fallen asleep early or a meeting ran late or his phone died. Excuses that made sense on the surface. I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. I told myself that trust meant giving him the benefit of the doubt. Then came the subtle distance. When he came home from trips, he seemed tired, but not just physically. He was quieter, less affectionate. He'd still kiss my forehead, still ask how my day was, but his mind felt elsewhere. I'd chalk it up to work stress. I'd say, "Maybe you need a vacation," and he'd laugh softly and say, "Maybe someday." Talia noticed too. One evening when we were washing dishes after dinner, she leaned against the counter and said, "You and Daniel okay? He seems off lately." I shrugged, forcing a smile. "Just work. You know how it is." She looked at me a little too long, as if she wanted to say more, but then she nodded and changed the subject. At the time, I was grateful she didn't push. Now I know that moment mattered. The first real alarm came with a bank statement. I was paying bills one Saturday morning when I noticed a charge from a jewelry store in another city, not one Daniel had mentioned visiting. The charge wasn't enormous, but it was enough to make me pause. I called him into the room, holding the statement lightly, trying to sound casual. "Hey, did you buy something in Brighton last week?" His eyes flickered for a half second. "Oh, yeah, a client gift. I expensed it. Must have gone through the wrong card." He kissed my cheek and left the room to shower. I told myself that was reasonable, but a tiny seed of doubt took root. After that, little things began to stack. Missed hotel charges in a city he said he wasn't visiting, a delayed text response at odd hours, a new password on his phone. I noticed, but I didn't confront him. Part of me was afraid of what I might find. Part of me believed love meant not jumping to conclusions. Talia remained close. She still came over, still listened to me talk about work frustrations, still hugged me tightly when she left. But I began noticing something else, too. When Daniel was around, Talia sometimes went quiet. Not always, just sometimes. And Daniel's jokes with her felt slightly too familiar, slightly too comfortable. Still, I scolded myself for thinking that way. They'd known each other for years. I didn't want to become paranoid. The turning point came on an ordinary Tuesday. I had left work early because of a sudden migraine. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted to crawl into bed and sleep. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Daniel's car already parked outside. My heart lifted. He must have finished his trip early. Maybe we could have a quiet evening together. I opened the front door softly. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then I heard a voice, a woman's voice, laughing. For a moment I froze, my migraine forgotten, my hand still on the doorknob. I knew Talia's laugh anywhere, but this wasn't her laugh. This was lighter, unfamiliar. I didn't walk further. I didn't call out. I just stood there listening. A low male voice responded, Daniel's voice, warm, close, intimate. My stomach turned to ice. I stepped back out the door without a sound, got in my car, drove away with shaking hands. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't walk in on whatever was happening inside my house. Not yet. Not without breaking apart. I ended up at Talia's apartment. I don't even remember the drive. She opened the door, surprised to see me. One look at my face and she pulled me inside. "What happened?" she asked. I sat on her couch, gripping my purse like a lifeline. I whispered, I think Daniel is cheating on me." Talia's eyes widened. Then she sat beside me, taking my hands. "Marissa, I need you to breathe, and I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to run out of here." I looked at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" Before I begin, if you've ever lived through betrayal like this, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. My name is Marissa, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was surrounded by loyalty. I believed I had a strong marriage, a loving husband, and a best friend who knew my heart better than anyone else. I thought my life was ordinary, safe, predictable. I had no idea that behind every warm smile in my home, behind every friendly hug, behind every reassuring word, a quiet storm was already building, and I was the only one who didn't see the clouds. I met my husband, Daniel, 12 years ago at a community fundraiser. He was charming, gentle, the kind of man who held doors open and listened when you spoke. He laughed easily and made everyone feel seen. When he asked for my number, I remember thinking that life had finally decided to be kind to me. We dated, we fell in love, and within 2 years we were married in a small garden ceremony surrounded by friends and family. I remember the way he looked at me at the altar, warm, certain, devoted. I built my trust on that look. My best friend, Talia, was my maid of honor. We had met in college, survived breakups together, celebrated promotions together, cried on each other's couches through bad days. She was the sister I chose. When Daniel came into my life, Talia embraced him immediately. They joked easily, teased each other like siblings. I was grateful. It felt like my 2 favorite people in the world liked each other. I saw that as a blessing. Looking back now, I wonder how many signs I ignored simply because I wanted everything to be perfect. The early years of our marriage were steady, not dramatic, not overly romantic, but comfortable. Daniel worked long hours as a regional sales manager. He traveled often, sometimes for 2 or 3 days at a time. I worked at a local accounting firm. Our routines were simple. Dinner when he was home, text messages when he was away, weekend grocery runs, Sunday morning coffee on the porch. Nothing felt suspicious. Nothing felt wrong. Talia lived only 15 minutes away. She came over often. Sometimes she'd drop by unannounced with takeout and gossip. Daniel would sit with us, laughing at our stories, offering his opinions when asked. If he was traveling, she'd keep me company so I wouldn't feel lonely. She'd say things like, "That man of yours is lucky to have you," and I'd smile, believing her. Life settled into a rhythm that felt safe until small cracks began to show. It started with missed calls. Daniel would be away on a work trip, and when I called in the evening, sometimes he wouldn't answer. He'd text later saying he'd fallen asleep early, or a meeting ran late, or his phone died. Excuses that made sense on the surface. I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. I told myself that trust meant giving him the benefit of the doubt. Then came the subtle distance. When he came home from trips, he seemed tired, but not just physically. He was quieter, less affectionate. He'd still kiss my forehead, still ask how my day was, but his mind felt elsewhere. I'd chalk it up to work stress. I'd say, "Maybe you need a vacation," and he'd laugh softly. I stared at Talia as if she had spoken in a foreign language. Another wife. The words made no sense. They floated in the air between us, heavy and impossible. My mind rejected them at first, like a body refusing a bad organ transplant. I shook my head slowly. "No," I whispered. That's not possible." My voice sounded far away, like it didn't belong to me. Talia's grip on my hands tightened. "Marissa, I wish I was lying. I wish I could take those words back, but I can't." Her eyes were glossy now, and a tear slid down her cheek. "I didn't know how to tell you. I've been trying to find the right moment. I never imagined it would be like this." I pulled my hands away from hers, not out of anger at her yet, but because I needed space to breathe. "Start from the beginning," I said. "Every detail. No softening, no protecting me, just the truth." She nodded, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "About a year ago, Daniel came into the cafe where I sometimes work on weekends. He said he was meeting a client, but instead he met a woman, a pretty woman, mid-30s maybe. They were holding hands, Marissa, holding hands like they belonged to each other." She swallowed. "At first, I thought maybe she was a cousin or a coworker. I didn't want to assume the worst, but then I heard him call her baby." My stomach lurched. I pressed a hand to my mouth. Talia continued, her voice trembling. "I confronted him that night. I told him I saw him. He went pale. He begged me not to tell you right away. He said it was complicated. He said he'd explain everything soon. He said he didn't want to hurt you." I let out a broken laugh. "Didn't want to hurt me," I repeated. "So instead, he lived a double life." Talia nodded miserably. "He told me her name is Brianna. He said they met years before you and he, and got married to her in a small civil ceremony. He claimed they separated, but never legally divorced. Then he met you. He said he loved you. He said he never meant for it to go this far. But when Brianna came back into his life, he didn't know how to end it with either of you." I sat frozen. My brain tried to picture a wedding I never knew existed, a ring on another woman's finger, another house, another bed, another life, all while he slept beside me and kissed my forehead goodnight. "And you," I said quietly, "you knew this for a year?" Talia looked ashamed. "Yes. And I hate myself for it. I kept thinking he'd come clean. I kept hoping it would end before it destroyed you. I didn't want to be the one to break your heart." I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. My hands shook. My breath came fast and shallow. Rage, grief, disbelief, they all tangled together inside my chest. "Do you realize," I said, cracking, "that I trusted you more than anyone? You watched me talk about him, defend him, plan a future with him, and you said nothing." Talia rose too. "I was wrong," she said, "completely wrong, and I'm so sorry. If I could go back, you can't, so don't." Silence fell between us, thick, heavy, unforgiving. Finally, I asked, "Where is she, Brianna. She hesitated. I don't know exactly, but I have an address from something I saw on his phone once. I wrote it down, in case you ever needed proof. She walked to a small drawer, opened it, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She placed it in my hand like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I stared at the address. My legs felt weak. My life had just split in two, before and after this moment. I drove home in a daze. The sky had darkened, the streetlights glowing soft amber. Daniel's car was still in the driveway. I parked down the street, not ready to face him yet. My phone buzzed with a message from him. Running late, work thing, love you. The lie hit harder than any slap could. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Every memory replayed in my mind, the missed calls, the distant eyes, the unexplained charges, all the signs I had excused, all the trust I had given freely. When I finally walked into the house, Daniel was alone in the kitchen, scrolling on his phone. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, you're home early." I stared at him, this man I had loved, this man I had built a life around. "Who was in our house today?" I asked. His smile faltered. "What?" I heard a woman's voice. "Don't lie, not now." He set the phone down slowly. "Marissa, I can explain." I laughed bitterly. "You've explained enough." I turned and walked to the bedroom. I packed a small bag, clothes, toiletries, my grandmother's necklace. Daniel followed me, pleading, talking fast, saying words like mistake, confusion, love. But his voice sounded like noise now, static in a broken radio. I didn't respond. I walked past him, out the front door, and drove to a cheap hotel across town. I sat on the edge of the bed all night, staring at the wall, hearing Talia's words over and over. Another wife. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Then I called a lawyer. By afternoon, I was driving to the address on the paper. I parked outside a modest townhouse, clean, quiet, a small child's bicycle in the yard. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I knocked. A woman opened the door. She was beautiful, calm, wearing a ring. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she said softly, "You must be Marissa." And I realized she had been expecting me. The woman at the door stepped aside without a word, as if this meeting had been written into her day. I walked inside on legs that felt numb. The living room was tidy, soft music playing from a speaker, a half-folded pile of laundry on the couch. Ordinary life. Another ordinary life that should never have existed beside mine. She closed the door behind me. "I'm Brianna," she said quietly. Her voice was gentle, almost cautious. "Please sit." I remained standing. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been married to my husband?" She flinched slightly at the word husband, but nodded toward a chair anyway. I sat because my knees threatened to give out. She took the chair across from me, folding her hands together like someone preparing for a difficult conversation she had rehearsed many times. 4 years, she said. 4 years. I had been married to Daniel for 8. "So for half of my marriage," I whispered, "you existed." Brianna's eyes filled. "I didn't know about you at first," she said quickly. "Daniel told me he had been married before, that it was over. He said he was waiting for the divorce papers to be finalized. He said the process was complicated." She swallowed. "Then one day I saw your name on his phone. A message. Something loving. Something real." Her voice cracked. "That's when I realized I wasn't the only wife." A strange calm washed over me. Not peace, just a quiet numbness. "So you stayed anyway?" She nodded slowly. "I confronted him. He told me he loved me. He said he couldn't leave you because of financial obligations, shared property, history. He said he was trying to untangle everything. I believed him. She laughed softly, humorless. I was a fool. We sat in silence, two women bound by the same man's deception, not enemies, victims of the same lie. "Does he have children with you?" I asked. Brianna shook her head. "No, I wanted them. He said we should wait until things were settled. Now I understand why." She looked up at me. "Do you have children?" "No," I replied. "We were trying." Her eyes widened. Trying while he was with me. The weight of that hit both of us at once. We inhaled sharply, as if the air had thickened. I stood. "I didn't come here to fight you. I came for the truth, and I got it." Brianna stood too. "I am so sorry," she whispered, "for everything." I nodded once. There was nothing more to say. When I returned to my car, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not delicate tears, deep shuddering sobs that came from somewhere ancient inside me. My chest ached, my throat burned. I cried until there was nothing left but exhaustion. In the following days, reality moved fast. My lawyer filed for divorce. Because Daniel had committed bigamy, the legal process became brutal. I moved into a small apartment. I told my family. I told my job. I told myself each morning that I could survive this. Daniel called, texted, begged, showed up at my door once, eyes red, voice shaking. "I love you, only you. I'll end it with her. We can fix this." I looked at him and felt nothing but clarity. "You already fixed it. You fixed it so thoroughly that there is nothing left." He left, and I never saw him again. Talia tried to call. I didn't answer at first. Then one day, weeks later, I agreed to meet her in a quiet park. She cried, apologized again, said she'd ended her friendship with Daniel the day I found out. I believed her, but forgiveness doesn't arrive on command. "I love you," she said. "I'll do anything to earn back your trust." I looked at her, my oldest friend, my deepest wound. You can't earn back time, but maybe someday you can earn a new beginning. Months passed. The divorce finalized. Daniel disappeared from my life like a bad dream fading in daylight. I changed my routine, took long walks, read books again, learned to cook meals for one. Slowly, my breath returned to normal. My sleep returned. My laughter returned. One afternoon, I sat by my apartment window watching the rain. I realized something simple and powerful. I had survived. Betrayal had not killed me. It had remade me. I picked up my phone and sent Talia a message. "Coffee tomorrow?" Healing is not forgetting. It is choosing to live anyway. And that is the lesson my broken marriage left me with. Sometimes the truth destroys your world, but it also clears the ground for something honest to grow. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight cutting through thin white curtains in my small apartment. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. I reached across the bed expecting warmth, expecting Daniel's shoulder, his sleepy breath, but the other side was cold and untouched. The realization settled quietly this time, without the sharp stab of panic, just a gentle reminder. This is your life now. I made coffee in a chipped mug I'd bought from a thrift store. I didn't have much furniture yet, a bed, a couch, a secondhand table, but the space was mine. No lies lived here, no secrets whispered behind closed doors, only me, only truth. I sat by the window watching people walk their dogs, hurry to work, live their ordinary lives. I wondered how many of them were carrying invisible storms inside, how many smiles hid fractures. I had been one of them not long ago. Later that day, I went to work. My coworkers had been gentle since everything came out. No prying questions, just soft looks, extra kindness. One of them, Carla, had slipped a note onto my desk the week I returned. It read, "You're stronger than you know. Coffee on me anytime." I kept that note in my purse. Routine became my anchor. Wake up, coffee, work, groceries, dinner, a walk, a book, sleep. Simple things, rebuilding from the ground up. But healing isn't a straight line. Some nights memories would ambush me. Daniel laughing at a joke, his hand on my back in a crowded room, the way he used to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Those moments used to feel romantic. Now they felt rehearsed, performed. I'd sit on my couch and let the grief wash through me like a wave, knowing it would recede again. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message. "Talia, thinking of you. Hope you're okay today." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore her forever. Part of me missed her laugh, her warmth, the history we shared before this mess. I finally typed, "I'm okay, one day at a time." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Talia, can we meet tomorrow? Just to talk, no pressure." I hesitated, then typed, "Coffee shop on Main at noon." When I walked into the cafe the next day, Talia was already there, sitting at a corner table. She stood when she saw me. For a moment, we just looked at each other, not hugging yet, not touching, measuring the distance that had grown between us. We sat, ordered coffee. Silence stretched. "I won't ask for forgiveness today. I just want to be here, however you need." I studied her face. She looked tired, thinner, like she'd been carrying her own weight of guilt. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked quietly, not angrily, just honestly. She closed her eyes. "Because I was scared of losing you, of being the reason your world collapsed. I told myself he would fix it. I told myself it wasn't my place, but the truth is I was protecting myself, not you." I nodded. That's what hurt the most. Not just what he did, but that I wasn't given the truth. Talia's voice broke. "I know, and I'm so sorry." We didn't fix our friendship that day, but we opened a door, a crack of light in a locked room. Over the next few weeks, we met occasionally, short meetings, safe topics, work, weather, books. Slowly, laughter returned in small doses, not because everything was okay, but because we were choosing to try. Meanwhile, the divorce process dragged on. Paperwork, meetings with lawyers, discussions about property, accounts, assets. It was exhausting, but I was grateful for one thing. Daniel didn't fight me. He signed what he needed to sign. He looked ashamed in every meeting, not ashamed enough to repair anything, but ashamed enough not to add more damage. The day the divorce was finalized, I sat alone in my car outside the courthouse. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed deeply. In, out, in, out. It was over. That night, I went to a small restaurant by myself. I ordered a meal I liked. I toasted myself with a glass of sparkling water. A woman at a nearby table smiled at me. I smiled back. I thought, I am still here. Weeks later, Brianna reached out. I stared at the unfamiliar number, then the message. Brianna, "Hi, Marissa. I hope you're well. I wanted to tell you I've ended everything with Daniel. I'm starting over too. I wish you peace." I read it 3 times, then replied, "Thank you. I wish you the same." 2 women connected by betrayal, now connected by survival. As months passed, I found pieces of myself I didn't know I had lost. I joined a small book club. I took a pottery class. My hands learned to shape clay. to mold something soft. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight cutting through thin white curtains in my small apartment. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. I reached across the bed expecting warmth, expecting Daniel's shoulder, his sleepy breath, but the other side was cold and untouched. The realization settled quietly this time, without the sharp stab of panic, just a gentle reminder. This is your life now. I made coffee in a chipped mug I'd bought from a thrift store. I didn't have much furniture yet, a bed, a couch, a secondhand table, but the space was mine. No lies lived here, no secrets whispered behind closed doors, only me, only truth. I sat by the window watching people walk their dogs, hurry to work, live their ordinary lives. I wondered how many of them were carrying invisible storms inside, how many smiles hid fractures. I had been one of them not long ago. Later that day, I went to work. My coworkers had been gentle since everything came out. No prying questions, just soft looks, extra kindness. One of them, Carla, had slipped a note onto my desk the week I returned. It read, "You're stronger than you know. Coffee on me anytime." I kept that note in my purse. Routine became my anchor. Wake up, coffee, work, groceries, dinner, a walk, a book, sleep. Simple things, rebuilding from the ground up. But healing isn't a straight line. Some nights, memories would ambush me. Daniel laughing at a joke, his hand on my back in a crowded room, the way he used to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Those moments used to feel romantic. Now they felt rehearsed, performed. I'd sit on my couch and let the grief wash through me like a wave, knowing it would recede again. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message. "Talia, thinking of you. Hope you're okay today." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore her forever. Part of me missed her laugh, her warmth, the history we shared before this mess. I finally typed, "I'm okay, one day at a time." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Talia, can we meet tomorrow? Just to talk, no pressure." I hesitated, then typed, "Coffee shop on Main at noon." When I walked into the cafe the next day, Talia was already there, sitting at a corner table. She stood when she saw me. For a moment, we just looked at each other, not hugging yet, not touching, measuring the distance that had grown between us. We sat, ordered coffee. Silence stretched. "I won't ask for forgiveness today. I just want to be here, however you need." I studied her face. She looked tired, thinner, like she'd been carrying her own weight of guilt. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked quietly, not angrily, just honestly. She closed her eyes. "Because I was scared of losing you, of being the reason your world collapsed. I told myself he would fix it. I told myself it wasn't my place. But the truth is, I was protecting myself, not you." I nodded. That's what hurt the most. Not just what he did, but that I wasn't given the truth. Talia's voice broke. "I know, and I'm so sorry." We didn't fix our friendship that day, but we opened a door, a crack of light in a locked room. Over the next few weeks, we met occasionally, short meetings, safe topics, work, weather, books. Slowly, laughter returned in small doses, not because everything was okay, but because we were choosing to try. Meanwhile, the divorce process dragged on. Paperwork, meetings with lawyers, discussions about property, accounts, assets. It was exhausting, but I was grateful for one thing. Daniel didn't fight me. He signed what he needed to sign. He looked ashamed in every meeting, not ashamed enough to repair anything, but ashamed enough not to add more damage. The day the divorce was finalized, I sat alone in my car outside the courthouse. The seasons changed quietly around me, as if the world had decided to keep moving whether I was ready or not. Leaves turned gold and fell. Cold winds arrived. Then winter softened into early spring. Through it all, I kept building my new life piece by piece, like a puzzle whose picture I couldn't fully see yet. One morning, I received a letter in the mail. Not a bill, not a flyer. A real letter in a cream-colored envelope with careful handwriting, my name written neatly on the front. Inside was a short note from my grandmother's old friend, Mrs. Elkins, the woman who used to sit beside us in church when I was a child. She had heard about my divorce through family whispers, the way small towns trade information like currency. Her note simply said, "Dear Marissa, my door is always open if you need a place to sit, drink tea, and let your heart rest. No explanations required." I didn't realize how much I needed that until I was standing on her porch that afternoon, breathing in the scent of fresh-baked bread. She hugged me like an aunt who had watched me grow up. We sat at her kitchen table, steam rising from 2 cups of tea, and for an hour I didn't talk about betrayal or divorce or Daniel. We talked about gardening, about her cat, about the way rain sounded on her tin roof. Ordinary peace, quiet healing. When I left, she pressed a small wrapped loaf of bread into my hands. "Take this home," she said. "Sometimes feeding yourself is the first step to loving yourself again." I cried in my car, but it was a gentle cry this time. Back at work, I was offered a promotion. Nothing huge, but a step up. More responsibility, more money, more proof that I was moving forward. I accepted it with a steady voice and a grateful heart. That evening, I celebrated by buying a new lamp for my apartment. Warm light filled the room. It felt symbolic, like I was inviting brightness to stay. Talia and I continued rebuilding our friendship slowly. She never rushed me, never asked when things would go back to normal. She simply showed up. When my car battery died one morning, she was there with jumper cables. When I got the promotion, she brought a cheap bottle of champagne. When I had a bad day and didn't want to talk, she sat beside me in silence and scrolled through funny videos until I laughed. Trust doesn't return in grand gestures. It returns in small, consistent choices. One afternoon, months after everything had settled, I ran into Daniel unexpectedly. I was leaving a grocery store when I saw him in the parking lot loading bags into his car. My heart stumbled in my chest, but I kept walking. Pretending not to notice felt childish. I decided to face the moment. "Daniel," I said. He turned, his eyes widened. "Marissa." We stood there in the sunlight, 2 people who had once shared everything and now shared nothing but history. "You look well," he said. "I am," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything." I believed he meant it in his own limited way, but apology without accountability is just noise. "I've forgiven myself," I said. "That's what matters." He looked confused, but I didn't explain. I wished him a good day and walked away, my steps steady, my heart calm. No shaking, no collapse, just closure. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights. I thought about the woman I had been when this all began, trusting, hopeful, unaware. I didn't blame her. She loved with a whole heart. That had never been her weakness. It had been her gift. The betrayal was never proof that I was foolish. It was proof that I was capable of deep love. And one day, I would love again, but this time with clearer eyes and firmer boundaries. I pulled a blanket around my shoulders and breathed in the cool night air. Somewhere in another part of town, Brianna was starting over too. Somewhere, Talia was choosing to be better. Somewhere, Daniel was living with the consequences of his choices. And here I was, alive, growing, learning. My story didn't end with revenge. It ended with renewal. Because the most powerful thing you can do after being shattered is to rebuild yourself into someone stronger than before. Spring arrived in full bloom, and with it came a kind of quiet joy I hadn't expected to feel again. Trees outside my apartment dressed themselves in green, windows opened, laughter drifted up from the street. The world, it seemed, had forgiven me for the sin of being broken. On a Saturday morning, I attended my pottery class as usual. My hands had grown more confident, shaping bowls, mugs, small vases. That day I created a simple cup. No fancy curves, no decorations, just smooth clay, balanced and strong. When I finished, I realized I had made something that mirrored how I felt inside. Not extravagant, not perfect, but steady. My instructor, an older man with kind eyes, looked at it and said, "You're finding your rhythm." I smiled. "I think I am." After class, I stopped by a small farmer's market. I bought fresh strawberries, a loaf of bread, and a bundle of sunflowers. At home, I placed the flowers in a jar on my kitchen table, yellow petals bright against the glass, life filling empty space. That afternoon, Talia came over. We sat on the couch, sharing strawberries and cream. She told me about a new job she was applying for. I told her about my promotion. We laughed at a silly television show. At one point, she looked at me and said, "I miss us." I understood what she meant. Not the broken us of the past few months, but the college us, the carefree us, the sisters by choice us. I took a deep breath. "We'll never be exactly that again," I said, "but we can be something new, something honest." She nodded. "I'll take honest." That word had become my compass, honest with myself, honest with others. No more swallowing doubts, no more painting cracks gold and pretending they were fine. One evening, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not emails, not work reports. I started writing my story. Not for anyone else, just for me. Page after page poured out. The good, the bad, the betrayal, the survival. By midnight, my fingers ached, but my chest felt lighter. I realized storytelling wasn't just entertainment, it was healing. Naming pain gives it shape. Giving it shape takes away its power to haunt you. Weeks later, Mrs. Elkins called. "My garden needs help," she said, "and I thought of you." I laughed. "I've never gardened in my life." "Well," she replied, "neither had I when I started. We learn." So every Wednesday afternoon, I went to her house. We planted herbs, tomatoes, small flowering bushes. We knelt in dirt, our hands muddy, our knees sore, our laughter soft. She told stories of her youth, her husband who passed years ago, her quiet bays. She never asked about Daniel, never brought up my divorce. She just offered presence. And presence, I learned, is sometimes the greatest gift. As months rolled by, I stopped counting the days since my world fell apart. I no longer woke with dread. I woke with plans, with curiosity, with space in my heart. Then one evening, I received an unexpected email from my lawyer. "Marissa," it read, "I wanted to inform you that your ex-husband's case of bigamy has concluded. He accepted full responsibility. There will be no further legal matters involving you." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Daniel's chapter in my life was officially, permanently closed. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel sorrow. I felt free. That night, I walked to a small cafe and ordered hot chocolate. I sat by the window, watching people pass under glowing streetlights, couples holding hands, friends sharing jokes, children tugging parents forward, life unfolding in countless stories I would never know. And I thought, my story isn't just about pain, it's about resilience, about learning that the heart, even when shattered, can piece itself together into something beautiful and strong. A young woman behind the counter smiled at me and said, "You always look so peaceful when you come in here." I smiled back. I worked hard for this peace. On my way home, I realized something important. The biggest confrontation in my story hadn't been with Talia or Brianna or even with Daniel. It had been with myself, facing my own fears, my own denial, my own strength. And I had won. Summer came quietly, one warm day at a time. My apartment filled with the scent of fresh flowers from Mrs. Elkin's garden. My balcony hosted small pots of herbs that I proudly watered each morning. These tiny rituals had become my anchors, proof that I could nurture something and watch it grow. One Saturday afternoon, Talia called me with excitement in her voice. "I got the new job," she shouted. I laughed and cheered with her over the phone. Later, we met for lunch at our favorite diner from college days. We ordered the same meals we used to eat years ago, and for a moment, time folded in on itself. Between bites, Talia grew quiet. "I want to tell you something," she said. "When all this happened, I thought I'd lose you forever. I told myself I deserved that. But you gave me a chance, and I don't take it lightly." I looked at her. My best friend, my betrayer, my rebuilding partner. "I didn't give you a chance because you deserved it," I said gently. "I gave you a chance because I deserved peace." She smiled through misty eyes. "You always were the stronger one." I shook my head. "No, I learned to be." That difference mattered. A few weeks later, Mrs. Elkins invited me to a small gathering in her backyard, just a handful of neighbors, folding chairs, lemonade, and homemade pie. As the evening sun dipped low, I sat listening to stories from people twice my age, tales of lost loves, rebuilt lives, unexpected turns. I realized that heartbreak wasn't a unique tragedy, it was a shared human experience, and so was healing. When I got home that night, I opened the document where I had been writing my story. I added more pages, not about Daniel, not about the betrayal, but about what came after, the growth, the self-discovery, the quiet victories no one sees. I thought about sharing it someday, maybe anonymously, maybe for someone else sitting on a hotel bed at 3 a.m, feeling their world collapse. Maybe my story could remind them that survival is possible. One afternoon, while watering my balcony herbs, I noticed a neighbor struggling with grocery bags. I offered to help. She smiled gratefully. We walked up the stairs together. Her name was Leela. She was new to the building. We chatted for a bit. She invited me in for tea. We talked about books, jobs, travel. When I left, she said, "I'm glad I met you." So was I. My world, once shattered, was filling with new connections, new routines, new hope. Then one quiet Sunday, I received a message from an unfamiliar number. "Hi, Marissa. This is Brianna. I hope it's okay to reach out. I just wanted to tell you I'm moving to another city for a fresh start. Before I go, I wanted to say thank you. Your strength gave me courage to leave too." I read the message slowly. A strange warmth spread in my chest. Not pride, just shared understanding. I replied, "I wish you happiness, Brianna, truly." Sometimes closure doesn't come from confrontation, it comes from compassion. As the year continued, I stopped seeing myself as a victim. That label no longer fit. I was a survivor, a builder, a woman who had faced truth and lived. One evening, sitting on my couch with a cup of tea, I reflected on the day I heard Talia's voice say, "Your husband has another wife." It felt like a lifetime ago. The shock, the collapse, the fear. And yet, here I was, breathing, laughing, loving myself. The story that began with betrayal had become a story of transformation. I turned off the lights, walked to bed, and whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you." Not to Daniel, not to the betrayal, but to the strength that had always lived inside me, waiting for the moment I would finally need it. Autumn returned, painting the city in shades of amber and rust. I walked through fallen leaves on my way to work, feeling the crisp air fill my lungs. The world felt wider now, full of possibility instead of fear. I didn't realize how small my life had become when it revolved around Daniel. I had mistaken comfort for completeness. Now I knew better. One Friday evening, Lila, my neighbor, knocked on my door holding a small container of soup. "I made too much," she said. "Thought you might want some." I invited her in. We sat on my couch, sipping soup and chatting. She told me about her recent breakup, how she had moved to this city to escape memories. I listened, not fixing, not advising, just understanding. At one point, she said, "You seem like someone who's been through a storm." I smiled softly. "I have." "Any advice?" she asked. I thought for a moment. Don't rush your healing, and don't let someone else's lies define your worth. She nodded slowly. "I'll remember that." After she left, I realized something. I had become the calm voice I once needed. Weeks later, Talia invited me to a small art show featuring local painters. We walked through the gallery, studying bold colors and quiet landscapes. One painting caught my eye. A woman standing in a field of broken glass, sunlight pouring over her shoulders. The title read, "After the Shatter." I bought it. When I hung it in my living room, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Mrs. Elkins visited soon after. She stood in front of the painting and said, "That's you." I laughed. A little dramatic, don't you think? She squeezed my hand. Truth often looks dramatic to those who've never faced it. I loved her for that. The holidays arrived. For the first time in years, I decorated my apartment alone. A small tree, simple lights, soft music. I invited Talia, Lila, and Mrs. Elkins for dinner. We cooked together, laughed, shared stories. No one asked about Daniel. No one needed to. This was my family now. Chosen. Honest. Safe. That night, after everyone left, I sat beside the glowing tree and realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. A year had passed since the day I heard the strangers laugh in my house. 12 months since my world cracked. 12 months of rebuilding. I whispered to the quiet room, "I'm proud of you," speaking to the woman I had become. On New Year's morning, I wrote down goals, not about love, not about marriage, but about joy, travel, creativity, growth, friendship, peace. I didn't need a partner to complete me. If love came again, it would be a bonus, not a necessity. One afternoon, walking home from work, I saw a couple arguing on a sidewalk. Harsh words, tearful eyes, a scene that once would have terrified me. Now I felt compassion. I wanted to tell them both, storms pass, truth heals, strength grows. But I kept walking. Some lessons must be learned, not taught. As I unlocked my apartment door, I looked up at the sky turning pink and gold. I thought about the girl who believed trust was automatic, loyalty guaranteed, love unconditional. She had been innocent, hopeful, not foolish, just human. And I honored her. I honored the pain. I honored the growth. Because sometimes life breaks you to reveal who you truly are. And I had finally met myself. By the time another spring arrived, I hardly recognized the woman I used to be. Not because I had erased her, but because I had expanded beyond her. My days were full now, Work, pottery, gardening with Mrs. Elkins, coffee with Leela, long walks with Kalia. My life no longer had empty corners echoing with someone else's absence. One morning, I received an email from the community center where I attended pottery class. They were starting a storytelling night, people sharing real-life experiences through spoken word. My instructor had nominated me. At first, I laughed at the idea. Stand on a stage? Talk about my life? My pain? My growth? But the more I thought about it, the more I felt a quiet calling. If writing my story had helped me heal, maybe speaking it could help someone else feel less alone. So I said yes. For weeks I practiced, in front of my mirror, in front of Talia, in front of Mrs. Elkins. I shaped my words carefully, not as a victim, not as a hero, just as a woman telling the truth. The night of the event, the room was small. Folding chairs, soft lighting, a microphone at the front. My hands shook as I walked to the stage. I looked out at the audience. Strangers, friends, faces waiting to listen. I began. I told them about trust, about friendship, about love, about the day everything collapsed, and about the long road back to myself. I didn't dramatize. I didn't soften. I just spoke from the heart. By the end, the room was silent. Then gentle applause. Not loud, not roaring, just warm, honest. Afterward, a young woman approached me. Her eyes were red. "I'm going through something similar," she whispered. "Thank you for reminding me I won't always feel this broken." I hugged her. "You won't," I said. "I promise." On my way home, I realized that my pain had been transformed into purpose. The betrayal that once defined my days had become the foundation of my compassion. Later that week, I got another surprise message, this time from Daniel's sister. We had never been close, but she wrote, "I heard about your storytelling night. I wanted to say I'm sorry for what my brother did to you. You deserved better." I didn't respond. Not because I was bitter, but because I no longer needed validation from that chapter of my life. Talia and I celebrated my storytelling night with pizza and cheap wine. She raised her glass and said, "To Marissa, the woman who turned ashes into light." I rolled my eyes but smiled. I said, "To all of us who keep going." Summer returned again, warm, bright, alive. One Sunday, Mrs. Elkins and I sat in her garden, surrounded by flowers we had planted with our own hands. She looked at me and said, "You know, dear, some people go their whole lives without ever meeting themselves. You have. That's a rare gift." I reached over and held her hand. I had help. She winked. We all do. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the story's beginning. The day I confronted my best friend, the moment she revealed my husband's secret wife, the shock that split my life in two. And I realized that story was complete. Not because every question had been answered, not because every wound had vanished, but because I had reached acceptance. I had confronted betrayal. I had faced truth. I had chosen myself. And in doing so, I had gained a life more authentic than the one I lost. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well. By the time the second anniversary of my divorce approached, I didn't even realize it until Talia texted me. 2 years today, she wrote. Proud of you. I stared at the message, then looked around my apartment. The plants, the paintings, the pottery on the shelves, the warm lamp glow, the life I had built with my own hands. 2 years ago, I was sitting in a hotel room, shaking, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. And here I was now, whole in a way I had never been before. I replied, proud of me too. That evening, I took myself out to dinner again, not as a ritual of survival this time, but as a celebration of thriving. I ordered my favorite dish, brought a book, and enjoyed my own company. Halfway through dessert, the waiter said, "You always look like you're on a date with yourself." I laughed. "I am." He grinned. "Best kind of date." Walking home, I passed the park where Talia and I had our first conversation after everything broke. The benches were the same, the trees taller. I sat there for a moment, remembering the version of me who could barely breathe from pain. I wished I could sit beside her and whisper, "You make it. You really do." Life has a strange way of continuing. The job promotion led to another opportunity. I started mentoring younger employees. I traveled alone for the first time, visiting a coastal town and waking each morning to the sound of waves. I wrote postcards to Mrs. Elkins. I took photos for Leela. I laughed loudly with Talia in restaurants. I didn't search for love. I let it go. Not in bitterness, but in trust that if it was meant for me again, it would come in truth, not secrecy. One afternoon, while walking along the beach during my solo trip, I saw a couple renewing their vows. Simple, barefoot, smiling. A small crowd clapped as they kissed. I watched, feeling no envy, only clarity. I didn't need someone to promise me forever to know my worth. When I returned home, I found a small package at my door. Inside was the finished cup from my pottery class, glazed and polished. A note from the instructor read, "You found your rhythm. Don't lose it." I placed the cup in my kitchen. I drank my morning coffee from it every day. Another season passed. Mrs. Elkins grew frail. One day she didn't answer her door. I called her niece. We found her resting peacefully in her bed, gone in her sleep. At her small memorial, I placed sunflowers beside her photo. She had been a gentle teacher in my healing, even without trying. Afterward, Talia hugged me. "You gave her so much joy," she said. I shook my head. She gave it to me. Grief came again, but this time I knew how to sit with it, to breathe through it, to let it pass without swallowing me whole. In quiet moments, sometimes I thought of Daniel, not with longing, not with rage, just as a chapter in a book I no longer read. I hoped he had learned something, but whether he had or not no longer mattered to my peace. My story had started with confrontation and betrayal. It ended with acceptance and growth. Not every ending is dramatic. Some are gentle, soft, real. One night, sitting on my balcony under the stars, I whispered, "Thank you," once more. Not to the pain, but to the journey. Because the woman who had been shattered had rebuilt herself into someone she was proud to be. And that was the greatest revelation of all. The third year after my divorce began quietly. No grand realizations, no dramatic moments, just a soft sense of belonging to my own life. I woke each morning without dread. I moved through my days without bracing for impact. The storm had passed, and the sky had cleared so gradually I almost didn't notice when the sun became constant. One Saturday, I took a long walk through the city. The streets were busy with weekend energy. Couples carrying grocery bags, children racing pigeons, elderly neighbors resting on benches, life unfolding in small, ordinary scenes. I walked without destination, just letting my feet guide me. I passed the cafe where I used to sit alone in the earliest days of my healing. I passed the park where Talia first told me the truth. I passed the street where Daniel and I once lived. I didn't stop. I didn't look up at the old house. I simply kept walking. Forward had become my natural direction. That afternoon, I met Talia for lunch. We sat outside, sunlight warming our faces. She talked about a man she had started seeing. Kind, gentle, honest. I listened, happy for her, without the old sting of comparison or fear. "You know," she said, stirring her drink, "sometimes I think about that day. The day I told you. I still hate myself for how long I waited. I looked at her, really looked at her. The friend who failed me, the friend who stayed, the friend who changed. You don't owe yourself punishment forever, I said. You told the truth, eventually, and then you did the work. That matters. Her eyes softened. I love you, you know. I love you too, I said, and this time it didn't hurt to say it. Later that week, I received an email from the community center. They wanted me to host a monthly storytelling circle, a safe space for people to share personal stories, healing stories, hard stories. I smiled as I read it. Life had a quiet way of coming full circle. On the first night of the circle, I arranged chairs in a loose circle. I lit a small candle in the center. People arrived slowly. A man grieving his brother, a woman rebuilding after addiction, a teenager who felt unseen. We sat together, strangers connected by the invisible threads of being human. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't tell the whole story again. I just said, I once lost everything I thought defined me, and in rebuilding, I found myself. They nodded. They understood. On my way home, I walked under streetlights, their glow soft and steady. I thought about the day my world cracked, the day I heard laughter in my home that didn't belong to me, the day Talia whispered the impossible truth, the day I knocked on Brianna's door, the day I packed a bag and walked out of my marriage, the day I sat alone, terrified of the future. I wanted to reach back through time and take that woman's shaking hands in mine, to tell her, you will laugh again. You will trust yourself again. You will wake up one day and feel peace instead of panic. You will build a life so honest that no lie can ever live in it again. I couldn't do that, but I could live it, and I was. A few weeks later, I visited my parents. We sat on their porch, drinking iced tea. My mother watched me quietly for a while, then said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. "I am." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "I worried about you so much." "I know, but I'm okay. Better than okay." On the drive home, I turned the radio off and drove in silence, listening to the hum of the road beneath the tires. A simple sound, steady, grounded, like my life now. That evening, I poured myself tea into the pottery cup I had made, the one my instructor said held my rhythm. I held it in both hands, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. I thought about how clay begins as soft mess, shapeless and uncertain, until patient hands mold it. Fire hardens it, glaze seals it, and something fragile becomes something strong enough to hold heat, to hold life, to hold comfort. That was me. Not the woman who trusted blindly, not the woman who crumbled in shock, but the woman who learned, who faced truth, who chose herself, who rebuilt with intention. I sat by my window and watched the city lights flicker on one by one. I realized that betrayal had been the spark that forced me to finally see myself, see others clearly, see what love should be, see what friendship requires, see that peace is possible after chaos. My story began with a confrontation, a best friend's trembling voice, a husband's hidden life, a truth that shattered everything. But it ended here, with quiet, with steadiness, with a woman sipping tea in a home filled with honesty, with a heart that had room for joy again, with a life that belonged fully to her. If there is one lesson I carry forward, it is this. You can lose people. You can lose trust. You can lose the life you thought you were meant to live. But you do not lose yourself unless you abandon yourself. And I never did. Even in the darkest moment, some small part of me held on. That small part grew. And now I stand whole. Not because the past never happened, but because I survived it. And because I chose truth over illusion, courage over fear, self-respect over comfort. My name is Marissa. This is my story. And if you're listening to this with a cracked heart and shaking hands, know this: you will find your way too.